So I came to America like every other immigrant who comes here to chase after my dreams. I always tell people America is that place where dreams and dreamers collide. So Glenn, I came with $50 and 2 bags, a lot of dreams. And of all the places, New York, and I find work right away in a matter of a few weeks. And my workplace was the 81st floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
North Tower was hit second.
And the North was actually hit first.
It was hit first.
Yes, it was a second to go down.
So were you above?
Yeah, I was actually. It was interesting. I was under. The plane struck several floors above us, but part of the wing of the plane that day tore through our floor.
Oh my
And my wife actually also was there. She worked on the 71st floor of the South Tower, and she was 4 months pregnant. Oh. So that day God miraculously spared 3 lives.
So you got out. Did you immediately get into?
So when the impact of the plane, the incredible explosion, jet fuel, fire breaking around us, walls collapsing, people screaming, and
the jet fuel was coming into your floor.
Yeah, I mean everything within inside was catching fire, and someone on our floor rallies us and says, "We've got to beat this fire." So we start crawling our way, looking for the nearest stairwell. There were several sets of stairwells on that every floor. The closest stairwell was on our right. We passed the place where the elevators were. The jet fuel had come down and balls of fire were shooting out, so that was not our way out.
Jeez.
So we make our way to the stairwell, and then that's when thousands of people running down, and also firemen and policemen going up as we are going down. And all along that time, as I'm running down, we really don't know what has happened, but I'm thinking about my pregnant wife, 4 months pregnant, and every day she's at work at 8:40 on the other tower. And then as we're running down, we hear another explosion. And Glenn, you and almost everyone watching us saw it that day. It was a second plane now crashing into the second tower.
Before this happened, you were standing in your office and you were feeling, I came to America, I've been here, how long?
For 6 months.
6 months. Been here 6 months. I'm really at the pinnacle, at least in space, I'm at the pinnacle of American success. And you felt like you were having a conversation with God.
Yeah, Glenn, I actually wrote an email. In fact, to back up, Sunday morning before 9/11, there was a missionary that came by my home church. He was talking about his work in Africa. And I remember writing the biggest check I'd ever given to the Lord's work. And as I'm dropping that check, I hear a whisper, "I don't need your money, I need your heart." So for me, at that moment, I started this introspection. Where is my heart? Is my heart in the right place? Am I chasing stuff instead of chasing that which is on God's heart? Monday, September 10th, was again an unusual day. I signed up a life insurance policy. And I sat with my wife is falling asleep. I tried to wake her up. And I said, "I want to talk to you about something we've never talked about before." And she said, "What is it?" I said, "It's called death." And she said, "We're young. Why are you talking about death?" I said, "Well, there's a baby on the way. We'll never talk about it again. If something would happen to me, this is the money. This is who you need to call." The next day was 9/11.
Oh my God.
So those two things that happened. And then September 11th, one of the first things I did was write an email to a friend in my home church in New Jersey at 8:05 in the morning saying, "Tom, something's happening to me. I've been in America for 6 months. I'm chasing stuff. I feel empty. There's got to be something more than all of this. Pray for me. I can't explain what I'm going through right now." So I sent that email 40 minutes before the plane crashed in. So when I look back and I just see just the mercy of God and a thread of God trying to get my attention and trying to wake me up to what are the things that's more important than just going through the motions of life.
Because you're a faith guy, your wife, I assume, is the same.
Yes.
If it were me and my wife woke me up the night before and said, "Hey, in case something happens," I would be like, that was a prompting. Something's going to happen to him. He's not going to make it out. Did she go through that? Was that on her mind?
She came into the building by the last E train that made its way to the basement of the building. By then the North Towers hit and she's pushed out. And sadly, as she's pushed out and she's still standing around the building, the second
So she's not up?
No, she didn't get to go up.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Okay.
And she sees the second plane crash into her tower, and the second plane hit a lot lower. And then this very, very sad reality of that day, people jumping out of the building and bodies landing around her. She hears a thud, and then she didn't quite remember what I was wearing that day, but she remembered the tie. And my wife is one of the people that, she looks at someone and she can remember what socks they were wearing, what tie. So she didn't remember what I was wearing except the tie. And she talks about how she was looking at those people jumping and thinking, I could be one of them, trying to identify me. When a girl comes out of nowhere and grabs her and says, "You're pregnant. You have to live for this child you're carrying," and pulls her out of that place and takes her to a place of safety, an apartment in New York, and opens the good book and starts speaking life and starts saying, don't worry, your husband's going to be okay. So that was her rescue. But the trauma that we went through for many hours, I thought she was gone, and she thought I was gone.
Recognize any part of the story that kind of goes with yours?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had just parked my government vehicle. Being a Secret Service agent, we had secured parking under Tower 1. And
Which is at the north or the south? Tower 1 and Tower 2?
That's Tower
the
1's
tower.
the north, yeah.
Okay.
And was going up into the elevator because my route to work to 7 World Trade, which is where our offices were, we'd take the elevator up, we'd walk across the plaza, across the pedestrian bridge that went over Vesey Street, and into my building, past security, and on with my day. And so while you were talking about the explosion and going past the elevator, I was in the elevator. And the sounds and noises and the elevator car shaking and the lights flickering took me a while to ask a lot of firefighters, figure out what was going on. Many years later, through talking to an engineer, I found out it was the fire, the jet fuel pouring down the sides of that elevator shaft and the fire coming down. Why the car I was in was not engulfed in flames, and why I made it out.
So did you know, when you got into the elevator, did you know that something was wrong?
No, I was just going to work.
So it impacted while you were going up?
Correct.
Holy cow.
And I thought I was late, which for law enforcement, if you're on time, you're late.
Yeah.
And there was a freak accident and let my supervisor know. And so when that happened, I'm in the elevator and all of this stuff is occurring. I'm thinking I'm just getting stuck in an elevator malfunction. I'm going to get to my office. We're all going to laugh about it, but I'm going to be the girl that got stuck in the elevator and was really late. And we know that day turned out completely
Much different.
different.
Now, you had a meeting, but you were going to Tower 7, right?
Correct.
So, and Tower 7 didn't collapse until the afternoon.
Until, right.
Right. So
around
were your
5:30.
co-workers, did they live, all of them?
Except for one.
Except for one.
And the ironic thing about that is we were preparing for a big UN event. So we had world leaders coming in from across the world. We had NYPD, FDNY meetings set up for that morning. And so along with that comes armored vehicles that are brought up from DC. Well, we have a whole unit that is assigned to do security for that. This particular gentleman came up from DC to do that security, and he had, what we think happened is that he got off shift, went to sleep. We set him up at the Marriott Marquis that used to be down there. And all of us went down, and he literally slept through it and didn't know what was going on. Did find remains many, many years later, and so we were able to give closure to his family. Yeah.
So when you left the elevator, where were you? What floor were you on when you got out of the elevator?
I was on the very first, the ground floor. Was called ground level.
So you leave right away the building? Do you know what's going on then?
I'm trying to assess what's going on, like any good law enforcement person. The instincts kick in.
Right.
I'm looking around, I'm taking in the scene. I think there's been some sort of explosion.
Okay.
And in my head it just said, get out. And so I looked around, people were doing the oddest things, and I grabbed as many people as I could, went up an escalator, and I ended up on the plaza level outside of 6, facing the towers. And so the same thing that his wife saw was immediately met by a debris field of metal, of concrete, pieces of people. Yeah.
I remember seeing those images on television, and it affected me on television for years. I was up at Ground Zero a week after, and I could smell it for years after. I didn't witness it like you guys did.